Greetings, everybody. I'm Audrey Galex, and welcome to At the Table, where we are serving up timely and timeless topics and issues that matter to you, your family, and your community. One of the hot topics we'll be covering throughout the year on this program is climate change and global warming and its disproportionate impact on communities of color and low-income communities. Later in this program, we'll be speaking with Cody Norad. He's the program director of GIPL, Georgia Interfaith Power and Light. But first, we look at another critical issue, and that is child sex trafficking. And we're exploring efforts to stem, if not stop it. And with us to talk about that is Camila Zolfaghari. She's the executive director of Street Grace. And Camila's right here. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
If you would give us the, I guess, elevator pitch, or if you remind our viewers what Street Grace is all about.
So Street Grace is an organization that really focuses on preventing child sex trafficking. And we know that prevention is important because you're never going to solve a problem by waiting till a child is exploited and then offering services. Now, our victims deserve and really receive the gold standard of care here in Georgia. We've got wonderful partners. But at Street Grace, we want to focus on strategically ending human trafficking through prevention, policy, and then pursuit of the buyers that fuel trafficking.
So let's start with the prevention piece, the educational piece.
Yeah, so on prevention, our prevention models really focus towards both children in the schools, middle schools and high schools, where we teach and train and empower kids to lead anti-trafficking awareness efforts in the entire school.
Because isn't, age 14, is that the average age when kids are trafficked, or is it lower now?
No, all the study, it's always been around 12. There's lots of studies. I mean, it's always been around 14. We've definitely had some younger. The average age that we, because think about it, it's a really vulnerable time. You're changing. It's when, psychologically you're starting to pull away more from your parents. Your body's changing. It's just very, very vulnerable time.
So you go into schools, work with preteens and teens.
So we work with preteens and teens on, what trafficking looks like, what exploitation looks like, and also what to do because, we tell kids, and we do teach kids, tell a trusted adult. But in reality, most kids tell other kids first. So to know when it's okay to not keep a secret, when you should tell. And with kids, we find so much that when you talk to them about trafficking and exploitation, they're not shocked by what they hear. They're going, oh yeah, that happened to a friend of mine, or, I think that may have happened to me. They just didn't. With kids,
it's been
normalized. You're almost teaching them that this shouldn't happen and this is dangerous. Parents are still shocked. And it's one of that big generation gaps that we have right now. But kids, they are solicited online all the time. And they might think it's funny, or they might think this person really loves them and falls for it.
So if you would, describe what that online situation is like. I know we mentioned earlier when we were talking gaming, online gaming.
Right. So it can be anything on the gaming. And that's somewhere where proportionally more boys have been vulnerable. They meet people online while they're gaming. It doesn't matter what the content of the game is. It doesn't have to be a bad game where they're shooting people. But all of our games now, they can talk to anyone in the world, and anyone in the world can talk to them. And they become teammates, they form relationships, they know when that person really needs to pay to level up or pay to get a gaming pack, and it's, hey, send me this picture and I'll pay that for you. Your mom just said no and you're really mad. And they wait for that child to be vulnerable. And they also, and you can be anyone online, so he may think he's playing games with this really cool girl from across town in high school, but it's really a 50-year-old guy, because you can appear like anything. And once you've sent that first picture, the next one they may ask for more. And it's, well, do this, or I'll send this picture to your friends, who I also know because we're all in the world, or I'll send it to your parents, or I saw your picture on school where you had the mascot, so I'll send it to your teachers. I know where you live. And now they've got you. And then, but it's on all social media. It's not just games, like on Instagram or on Facebook. There was a guy, when I was a prosecutor, we had his phone during the investigations, and he would send messages to about 50 girls a day. It was always the same thing. Hey, you're beautiful. I know it's crazy out of the blue. You just never know when there could be a spark. Anyone who responded, a lot of people don't, most people don't, but anyone who responded at all got a picture of a fistful of cash. I just sold my car for $5,000. I want to go out and celebrate. I'd love to take you to the mall. Who responded overwhelmingly was not the person who said, hey, yeah, I want to go to the mall with you. It was the person who said, my mom just lost her job and I don't know how we're going to pay our rent, or we're trying to get our power turned back on, or I just found out I think I'm pregnant and I know my boyfriend's going to dump me. It was somebody who was in a vulnerable position, and where traffickers used to wait for somebody to run away from home. So they were looking for the kid on the street in a bad neighborhood. Now they cast a wide net and they just wait for somebody to be vulnerable. And a broader number of our children are, because when you think about it, it's not that hard to make a 14-year-old girl fall in love with you online.
So this online sort of, parallel universe is really what's almost, scarier, and that is the trend now and in the future.
It is.
So legislatively, I know you work in that area as well. How are we addressing that, or are we still, looking at sort of the 20th century way of dealing with things?
So, very proud of Georgia. We have finally moved into getting an A grade for our human trafficking legislation. It's really something we've been working on as a state for the last 10 years to pull ourselves up from originally a failing grade to being one of the top states for legislation.
And what got us there?
A lot of hard work, a lot of dedicated friends and partners, and a lot of education, actually. When we first, one of our huge final wins last year was protecting child victims from being treated as perpetrators and charged with prostitution. And it's how so much of this came to light, was 14-year-old girls being charged with prostitution and no corresponding adult males being charged with buying or selling them. So there was a lot of, you're just trying to legalize child prostitution in Georgia. Like, no, but we are trying to go after the bad guys.
And stem the demand for it, too.
Yes, and stem the demand. And that was another huge final win. We've moved forward. In 2016, I was able to prosecute the first buyer in Georgia for human trafficking. But now our laws are even stronger than they were then.
And I want to go back. You were with the Attorney General's office at that time,
Yes.
correct?
Well, at that time, I was Fulton County's human trafficking prosecutor. I went from there to the Attorney General's office, where I was the state prosecutor, where we were able to do some great prosecutions and some great legislation. They've always been a leader on the legislative side. But with the legislation and the buyers, people don't know in Georgia, but it's huge. Those who buy sex with children are traffickers equal to those who are selling the children for sex. And the best part about Georgia is it's a buyer beware state. So when you purchase sex, you run the risk that you're buying somebody under 18, even if they swore up and down they were an adult. And you can be charged, and are charged with trafficking very often. And our penalties are amazing. They're now 25 to 50 years or life. We've just really been lucky in Georgia to have some amazing legislators that we've worked with consistently. Senator Renee Unterman, Representative Chuck Efstration. And then the First Lady last year really got on board. She has been now leading the charge on human trafficking and started the Grace Commission, and really was responsible so much for making sure that legislation and those last things that we've been trying to get for 10 years all passed last year.
You mentioned the Grace Commission. What exactly is that?
So the First Lady started a Grace Commission, and it's a group of government, nonprofit, and business leaders. I'm very honored that she asked me to be a part of it, where we're really working to tackle the issue of human trafficking in the state in a holistic manner, make sure we're approaching it from every side, kind of in an all-hands-on-deck approach. It's been really exciting to see the ideas that have come out of there. At Street Grace, we do everything with a survivor advisory board. And it's really key leaders who have been trafficked in the past, who have now really become survivors and survivor leaders.
So what kind of insights have you been getting from those survivors who are on your advisory?
Everything from, don't say that way, that's not really how it happens, don't say it that way. That is triggering and harmful to people who have been trafficked. And then also what is really needed. Our legislative goals for this year were greatly led and informed by our Survivor Advisory Board.
Because like you're talking, for example, about someone who's vulnerable because their mom lost a job,
right?
Or some kind of real practical kind of thing that you don't necessarily see as impacting sex trafficking,
right?
So is that another piece of it?
Yes, it is. One of the big ones we're talking about this year is the vacatur and expungement law. So for someone who was charged with, prostitution, with charges when they were being trafficked, and now they are out, and now they've gone through 2 years of a trauma-informed recovery program, but they've got these charges, and so they can't get a job, they can't get a house. So much of we've been talking about, housing today and, low-income housing and equal opportunity and fair pricing, they don't even qualify for, because so many of those organizations just check you right out if you have a criminal record. So helping victims who have become survivors, they are not victims anymore, they are survivor leaders, but continue in that strong path by helping them really.
So how can people like myself, other people in the community, how can we recognize when trafficking is going on?
So one thing you're often looking for is signs of control. Or lifestyle changes, clothing changes. So we do a lot in the schools. So if we're talking to a teacher, it's the kid that suddenly has her hair done and her nails done or is flashing some cash, and there's been no change in family circumstances to where they should suddenly be able to afford this. It can be the kid in school who comes in at, checks in homeroom, and then is gone during the lunch hour and gone during some of those middle classes, because we've had kids who, their trafficker made sure they're not tardy, so nobody's looking for them. They're not missing school, but then they missed the whole middle of the day because they're being sold to men on their lunch hour.
It's so unexpected when you think people still in school.
Yes.
Okay, we have just a brief time left. I'm just wondering, as you navigate this issue, what are your hopes and dreams for the future?
It really is a world where children, adults, everyone understands their value and their worth, and that they're treated as humans with instinctive value and worth. Because so much of the exploitation that happens is with someone who believes that their worth is attached to their body and somebody else's use of that. And it's what our children are taught, and it's what they're told. And so for someone to understand, this is wrong, this is exploitation, I am worth so much more than what this person is trying to sell me for. I am not a commodity. I have an inherent value as a human. That's the world that I hope we see, is our unique human value and worth.
And if somebody suspects something's going on, is there a particular number they should call or resource?
So first of all, if it's any amount of an emergency, 911 is the only answer. We have wonderful hotlines, but the best of situations, that gets to law enforcement in 3 hours. So if you see something, pay attention and call. And our law enforcement's trained to deal with this. We're so lucky in Georgia to have done so much training with law enforcement that they know what they're looking for. But there's also multiple hotlines. The National Human Trafficking Hotline, where you can go online, or you find it online, National Human Trafficking Hotline, or they even have a texting for Be Free, where you can text if it's just something where you just want to know more information. I think, are these the signs? And then in Georgia, for children, Georgia Cares is the organization that coordinates the services for children, and they have worked with the state to have a tool online where you can kind of answer a few questions and see, okay, these are really strong red flags. And then but be informed, be trained. Our community education is one of my favorite things to do, because people come out of there with a list of this is what trafficking looks like. This is what I should do about it. I have this number. By the time they're done, this is the number I have programmed into the school. And we do it with community groups, with churches, with other faith organizations, with schools. And it's just really, it makes a difference, because almost out of every one of those, someone either comes forward and tells us about something going on now, Or within a week or two, they're like, after that, my eyes were open and I realized and I made this call. And also know if you make that call, you might not see the results. You're not going to, police aren't going to show up at the airport with guns and blue lights, but they very well may be watching, following, in plain clothes, gathering evidence. They're there, they're doing their job, and you've done your job when you've reported it. And it makes such a difference in the lives of so many.
Camila, thank you so much for being with us. Camila Zolfaghari from Street Grace has been with us talking about child sex trafficking. We're going to pivot a little bit in the second half of the show to talk about climate change. We hope you'll stay with us.